Imagine transforming simple pieces of wood into breathtaking works of art. That is the magic of marquetry, a centuries-old craft that combines artistry with precision. Hi, I'm Aimee. Welcome back to the EuroLux home channel. Today, we'll be defining marquetry and discussing some of the similar art forms such as parquetry, intarsia, and pietra dura. We'll delve into the history of marquetry and meet some of the master craftsmen whose famous works may just inspire you to incorporate marquetry into your own home. So stay tuned. So in order to define marquetry, we first need to start with the word veneer, because marquetry is actually a veneering technique. So what is veneer? Veneer is the application of very thin slices of a material adhered onto a substrate in order to create a beautiful aesthetic design. Now, throughout history, veneer has always been equated with luxury because it was usually commissioned by the aristocracy or the royalty. And that's because it requires the skill of master craftsmen, it's very labor intensive, and usually exotic or rare materials were used, such as ebony or satin wood, shells such as mother of pearl, metals such as pewter or brass, or even bone and ivory. Now, if you have always thought that veneer was undesirable, then check out my video called Why Veneer is Not a Dirty Word, and I'll tell you all about it. So there are two main types of veneering technique, parquetry and marquetry. Behind me, I've brought in an antique Louis XVI style bed to demonstrate the two techniques. So what is parquetry? Parquetry uses veneer to create a beautiful geometric pattern. And you can see that right here in the middle of the headboard. So what do the King of France, Louis XIV, and the NBA superstar Larry Bird of the Boston Celtics have in common? Well, check out my video, What is Parquetry? And I'll tell you all about it. So we've finally reached the point where we can define marquetry. And we'll start with the root French word marqueter, which means to variegate or inlay. And that's what marquetry is, the veneer process of taking slices of materials and arranging them together, sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, to create an image or a picture. And behind me on the headboard are inset areas that show flowers, roses, and daisies, as well as a ribbon flapping in the wind. And it's mostly used on furniture, but often used on small decorative items such as boxes or clocks, or even larger areas such as wall panels and floors. Now, before we proceed, if you've been enjoying this episode and would like to learn more about European antiques, be sure to support the EuroLuxHome.com channel by liking, subscribing, and maybe even sharing with a friend. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments below with any questions or perhaps even suggestions for future content. So now let's dive into the history of marquetry. We first have to talk about the oldest technique of inlay, which is intarsia. Intarsia is the process where we start with the substrate itself and will cut or groove a notch into that substrate and then take a separate piece of wood and actually cut it to fit down into that groove. Now, how is that different from marquetry? Well, marquetry takes very thin slices of materials and combines them together like a jigsaw puzzle to create an image or picture, whereas intarsia actually uses some areas of thicker wood and some areas of thinner wood. The adjoining pieces, some might be higher and some might be lower. And when those pieces are adjoined, you will create a relief or a sculptural or 3D effect, whereas marquetry, the surface is very smooth and even. So in the ancient world in Egypt, we find the oldest examples of intarsia, inlay furniture, in the tombs of the pharaohs. And in ancient Rome, outside the city, at the foot of Mount Vesuvius, we find examples of intarsia furniture in the small cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. And that's because in 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted, and all of that ash came down covering the cities, and the intarsia furniture was perfectly preserved. So fast forward to the 14th and 15th centuries, to the Italian Renaissance. And this is the time period where artisans are looking back to Greece and Rome for inspiration. And so the technique of intarsia is rediscovered. And there is an amazing example of intarsia in the studiolo at the Ducal Palace in Urbino, which features doors that look like they're open, but it's actually a trick of the eye performed with intarsia. Now, it's during this period of time in the Italian Renaissance that a very similar technique known as pietra dura became very popular. So the ruling family in Florence, Italy was the de' Medici, and they opened a workshop where wonderful works of pietra dura were created. And pietra dura is really a very similar process as intarsia. So you take the substrate, but in this case it's marble or stone, and you cut out a groove or notch, and then you use precious and semi-precious stones and inlay them into the marble or the stone. And that creates amazing works of art. So the technique of intarsia spreads across Europe in the 16th and 17th century in the Baroque and Rococo periods, and changes a bit, as we'll soon find out. But it remains popular through the 18th and 19th centuries. So while intarsia was rediscovered in Italy, the true epicenter of marquetry is France, under King Louis XIV at his court of Versailles. And this is where we meet our first master craftsman, André Charles Boulle. Boulle studied at his father-in-law's workshop, Pierre Goulle. And Pierre Goulle is the one who actually originated the marquetry technique of inlaying brass or pewter into tortoiseshell. However, it was Boulle who became so accomplished at the technique, and his arabesque and intricate designs were so popular that the technique became synonymous with his name. Boulle became so accomplished that he was actually appointed royal cabinet maker to King Louis XIV himself, and was invited to live at the Palace of Versailles, which was a great honor. And his work was really much in line with Louis XIV's taste for opulence. Now, Louis XIV supported Boulle and other artisans because it was part of a broader political strategy to establish France as a cultural leader in Europe. Today, Boulle's works can be found in the Louvre in Paris and the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And now we meet our next master craftsman, Jean-François Hubin. Hubin was a German who lived and worked in France, and he actually studied under Boulle's son. He became so accomplished that he became a favorite of Madame de Pompadour, the favorite mistress of Louis XV. And in fact, his most famous work is the desk of King Louis XV, but unfortunately he died before he could finish it. Yet it was finished by his student, Jean-Henri Riesner. Our next master craftsman was also a German who also lived and worked in France. He was trained by Hubin, and he became a favorite of Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. She loved to speak German with him because she hailed from the Habsburg Empire, and her native tongue was German. Unfortunately, things went awry during the French Revolution when King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette lost their heads. All of Riesner's pieces began to be dispersed, and he tried his best to buy them back, but unfortunately that bankrupted him, and he died penniless. David Röntgen is our next master craftsman, born in Germany and studied with his father, Abraham. He became very accomplished and was also a favorite of Queen Marie Antoinette, as well as Tsarina Catherine of Russia. He had workshops across Europe, in Paris, Berlin, and St. Petersburg. He was very famous for secret drawers in the pieces that he made. And Things also went awry for him during the French Revolution, as his workshops and inventory and all of his personal belongings were seized and he died impoverished. So no discussion of the history of marquetry would be complete without mentioning the master craftsman Jan van Meckeren of the Netherlands. Van Meckeren lived during the 17th century, the Dutch Golden Age, which was a period of great wealth and great artistic production. Very famous artists were working during this period. Some you may know, such as Rembrandt and Vermeer. Van Meckeren was the leading furniture maker of his day, and his works today are found in the Louvre, the Rijksmuseum, and the Victoria and Albert Museum. Van Meckeren specialized in floral marquetry, and it really reflected the Dutch interest in 17th century still life. The composition, the technique, the color, the detail, all of these pieces are absolutely amazing, and they reflect the symbolic meaning of the transient nature of life. Today, if you travel to Italy, to the Amalfi Coast and the sleepy town of Sorrento, you will still be able to witness firsthand the centuries-old technique of marquetry, as artisans in their workshops are still producing amazing works of art. See you next time!